lecture on pesticide residue management in crop production, thanks to agricultureinformation.com. My lecture is basically on pesticide residue management in crop production. Pesticide residues are very, very important nowadays because the indiscriminate use of pesticides is leading to a lot of issues. One is environmental issues and health issues, and sometimes resurgence issues. So now the agricultural production is revolving around this use of the pesticide residues. That means use of pesticides, so which leave many residues onto the crop. So how to manage these pesticides in agriculture, and how to reduce the usage, or can we do any interventions? So this is the thing actually I'm going to cover for next 30 minutes. See, the main scheme of the presentation is like a small introduction on pesticides, pesticide residues, trends and their impact, pesticide residues, some of the case studies, and the residue management. See, in 1950 in India, farmers were using about 2.2 grams of active ingredient per hectare. But in 2023, it went up to 400 grams per hectare, which is almost 180-fold increase in the pesticide use in India. Due to the use of these pesticides, sometimes there is resistance development in the insects. And another important thing is, see, degradation of natural enemies, killing of the natural enemies, which otherwise, they act as a biological control in the environment and the part of their ecology. So these are killed because of use of some of the pesticides. Like neonicotinoids is, these pesticides are impacting honeybee populations. So likewise, this application of these pesticides, one way it is increase the productivity, the other way the flip side of it is the degradation of natural enemies. Sometimes secondary pest outbreaks. Secondary pest outbreaks means, for example, if you are spraying for leaf-eating caterpillar control, at the same time you can find some of the second complex, which has exactly happened in cotton. In cotton, you want to control the bollworm, but at the same time, we have the problem of whitefly and some of the aphid populations. And finally, the residues in the crops and products. For every pesticide, the usage particular norms are there, like pre-harvest interval. But these farmers are using the pesticides once in 3 days. If you take the example of chilies, where sometimes farmer is using it, especially in South India, like places like Andhra and some of the places, they apply 25 to 30 sprays on the crop. They are not even waiting for a week or 10 days. So that is a problem which actually accumulate the residues in the crops and crop products. That is a big issue revolving around everywhere. There is a high usage of pesticides, especially commercial crops like chilies, cotton and all. So if it is going to be the order of the day, using of the pesticides, then how to contain it, how to reduce it, that we are going to deal with this again here. If you look at the different profile of pesticides, almost 55% of pesticides are insecticides that kill the insects. And about 18% is the fungicides, which kill the fungi. Only herbicides are about 23%. If you look at the entire profile of India, you find more percentage of pesticide usage is confined to Andhra and Telangana, which is about 24%. Whereas in Punjab, it is 11%. So highest use is you can find in Andhra and Telangana because they are widely used on chilies, cotton and paddy. So if you look at India accounts only for 1% of global pesticide consumption. It is the second largest pesticide manufacturer in the world and fifth largest exporter after China, USA, Japan, Germany. China, USA, Germany and France. Researchers highlight pesticide residues, baby foods, tap water, and mother's breast milk also contaminated with these pesticides because of the eating of high pesticide studded vegetables and fruits. almost 68% of the food samples in one of the study conducted in Washington, D.C. And according to World Health Organization, almost 30 million cases are poisoned because of pesticides and 0.2 million deaths every year across the world due to the misuse or indiscriminate use of these pesticides. So therefore, there is a need to reduce the use of pesticides, but elimination is very, very difficult, because to feed the millions and millions of the populations, to increase the productivity levels, it is must to use the pesticides, but the judicious use and careful use of pesticides is very important, for which a lot of different methods and techniques which we are going to discuss in this. How these pesticides are coming, residues are coming in. Just when you spray on the crop, this is one of the chemical factors, the soil factors, environmental factors, and plant factors. Because some of the pesticides are effectively absorbed by the plant, translocated into the plant. Some plants, the rate of uptake is very fast. And for example, if you take this chemicals, some are stable chemicals, some are volatile chemicals. So the method of application, these are all some of the things which actually impact the pesticide residues on the crop. But of course, soil factors, because some of the soil application pesticides or the fungicides, the microbial activity in the soil, the pH of the soil, structure of the soil, the clay content of the soil, organic, these are all some of the soil parameters which will impact the residual nature of the insecticide when it is applied to the soil. Environmental, so the precipitation, rainfall, sometimes the air movement as a drift, temperature, these three. Of course, radiation is also an element, but majorly precipitation, air movement, and temperature, these things play a major role. Disintegration and non-disintegration depends on these environmental factors. But by all these factors like chemical, soil, environmental, plant factors, finally it is something like a cobweb. Everything is interwoven and everything is interlinked. That is why whatever we are using, we should be careful in understanding everything about this pesticide. To look at some of the case studies. See, herbicide problems, especially like glyphosate, is an issue in United States and European Union. These form as a residues in the food, which is a carcinogen, and it also impacted the soil biodiversity. Similarly, in neonicotinoids, which are banned in European Union now, these actually impact the bee population, which are very, very important for the pollination. Some of the pollinators are also affected by these neonicotinoids. Now these are getting phased out, like Confidor, Aptara, some of the thiamethoxam. These chemicals are being phased out now because of the neonicotinoids, which are very, very detrimental to the bee populations across the globe. Similarly, when false armyworm is affected in Africa, the repeated use of the molecules again and again that led to the resistance to insecticides. And because they did not follow the IPM, and only they went for repeated use of chemical pesticides. And in Costa Rica, an example where a lot of pineapple were rejected in the US and Europe because the residues of fungicides and nematicides. Those are the examples of from global. Some examples from India. Pesticide poisoning. See, it has become a hue and cry at one point of time, where Yavatmal district of Maharashtra, some of the unregistered and unapproved pesticides mixtures were used on cotton, which resulted in resurgence of the pesticides and non-control of the pest. Similarly, pesticide residues more than MRLs, maximum residual level MRL means. In Delhi and Tamil Nadu, some of the fungicides and insecticides like carbendazim, chloropyrifos, dimethoate, these were found on the fruits and vegetables. The very big issue here is when we are exporting from India to other countries, when these things are above GRLs, it is very difficult. There were instances where the consignment were returned from respect to countries, because European Union has got their own norms, America has got its own norms, Japan has got its own norms. So if these MRLs are more than specified by respect to countries, there is every possibility of sending the consignment back. And of course, internally, domestically also, these molecules, some of the persistent in the fruits and vegetables, impact the health of the people. And pesticide residue aerial spraying is one of the classic examples first identified in India, where the impact, detrimental impact or the negative impact of pesticide sprays. When endosulfan was sprayed by in the cashew orchards, which is the endosulfan is which is persistent and bioaccumulative, accumulated in the human body through the food chain that resulted in malformations, uh, premature births. These some of the problems were faced, and later a team of people surveyed and found it. This is because of the spray of endosulfan. This is one of the classic example. We can quote the bad impacts or improper use of pesticides, the impact on environment and the humans. And in Punjab, on cotton, neonicotinoids or pyrethroids are used indiscriminately and repeatedly, which has actually whitefly incidence has increased and finally impacted the cotton crop. And the CPAs were very, very ineffective. Some of the spurious CPAs have become problem. Some of the pesticides which are not under the patent, they are also made into concoctions and they were also sold in the market in different names. And though it is killing the insect, and finally it is resulting in some of the resurgence and repeated and not effectively working on the target pest or fungus. Some of the case studies where the success rate is also high. The high use of synthetic insecticide bollworm control. In cotton for the bollworm control, synthetic pyrethroids were used heavily a decade back, heavily, even before that. Heavily they were used for the control of the bollworm. And after the BT cotton, the cry protein, which is toxic to bollworm, BT cotton, there was a reduction in CPA usage by 40 to 70%. And also production cost has increased. And environmentally, it is also supported because you reduce the use of CPAs. This was happened in Maharashtra and Telangana with the support of Central Institute of Cotton Research in Nagpur. Similarly, in vegetables, especially Andhra and the cotton and vegetables also, 30 to 50% of CPA usage was reduced. Aphids and whitefly are controlled when they use neem oil and neem cake. These are all the natural botanical pesticides which were widely used by our ancestors, and also before the advent of crop protection agents or the pesticides. These are the molecules which are used by our predecessors, which effectively control the pests and diseases. But we have to use them repeatedly. Whenever we are using high use of chemical insecticides, in between the insects, one of the insecticide, for example, in between the insecticide usage, you can intercept this use of neem oil and neem cake. That also reduce the residues, as well as relatively it is more effective in controlling the pests and sucking complex like aphids and whiteflies. And similarly, in Himachal Pradesh, high use of CPA sprays for the control of fruit fly. This is a problem, severe problem in apple. Then they found the solution that male annihilation technique with the pheromones that actually helped in the reduction of CPAs by 60% of the fruit fly population. And this is done by in Himachal Pradesh done by the horticulture university there. And in case of rice, wheat, and cropping systems, high use of insecticides and pesticides very common in this rice and wheat cropping systems. Very, very common to use this. Where developing resistant varieties, mechanical weeding by pesticides, the best way of reduction of pesticides is better go with the developing a resistant varieties where the pest cannot harbor the plant, so that you can zero application of any insecticide on the crop. First line of defense, you always look for resistant varieties if they are available. And because of this one, 25 to 40% insecticide or sometimes herbicide usage was reduced to that extent the cost also. These studies were conducted by Punjab Agricultural University. So what I finally want to say here is there are so many techniques and methods are available which can be intercepted in production system that can reduce the use of crop protection agents or the insecticides. So where to intervene, when to intervene, what to use, how to reduce, all these things we have to check it out. Farmer has to check it out, and accordingly he has to. There are instances where 30 sprays of insecticides were reduced to 11 to 12 sprays by intercepting with some kind of indigenous technical knowledge techniques in chilies and vegetables. Where from these pesticide residues are coming in? Because one is some of the pesticides, they have the low pre-harvest interval. Low pre-harvest means if you apply the interval is only 3 days. For example, if you are applying within 3 days, that will carry a lot of residues. There are some insecticides 7 days. That means within 7 days you should not harvest. After 7 days you should harvest. But because of the low pre-harvest interval, because of the harvest interval means a time between the application of insecticide and the harvesting time. If the harvesting time and application of insecticide is less, automatically residues are left on the final product. Then indiscriminate use. For sometimes, sorry, there are some, while making the presentation, the sentence, some words are minced. Indiscriminate use. Here, what has happened is, for example, one insecticide, its life is after spraying on the crop, it is toxic for about 10 days, let's say. But farmer use once in 2 days, once in 3 days. And the recommendation is 2 ml per liter, he might go with 4 ml per liter. And many places we find that, application rates are very, very high compared to the recommendations. And dose time method of application. Say, for example, there are some concoctions. If you look at some places in Rajasthan where thiamine, which is not the right way because it persists in the soil and leaves some residues. Similarly, the dose and time of application, not in the midday when there is heavy drift, because whatever chemical you are applying, that should fall on the crop and it should be useful for the control of the pest. Frequency, how many times you are using that chemical. Repeated using the same chemical again and again will cause some resistance problems. And so many farmers, their lack of awareness, that awareness lead to, sometimes we came to know that, in the place of fungicide, farmers may use insecticide. Insecticide in place, they may use the fungicide. These instances were happened because lack of education to the farmer and lack of awareness and inappropriate equipment. What kind of nozzles to be used, what kind of sprayers to be used, what kind of adjuvants to be used. These are also very important. Without knowing all these things, when the farmer is directly going with the chemical application, the residues are very, very common. And finally, if you go to the residue management, integrated pest management, this is nothing but adopt different techniques like cultural techniques, biological techniques, mechanical techniques, and finally the techniques will culminate in reduction of the total quantity of pesticide that gets onto the plant. And some new generation CPAs, because where the pre-harvest intervals are more. Earlier we were using 2 ml, 3 ml per liter. Now the chemicals are there where 2 ml per 10 liters you can use. And sometimes you have to use adjuvants. When there is a rain, they should not be washed out. So to improve the bioefficacy molecules, you have to, for improve the bioefficacy, you have to use some spreaders and stickers. And strictly adhere to recommended CPS, whatever the crop it is. Okay. I'm giving an example of the time. Strictly adhere to the recommended CPS crop protection agents. When you are spraying on the crop, only recommended molecules are only allowed. You should understand what are the pre-harvest intervals for each molecule and use the indigenous technical knowledge in between to reduce the number of sprays. And finally, the chemical dispensing mechanism. How you are dispensing the molecule is also very important. For example, first of all, first line is that, you have to diagnose. For the diagnosis, you have to scout, find out what are threshold levels and go with the management. To reduce this one, minimize initial buildup of the pest population, frequently observed. One of the regular practice farmer does is the deep summer plowing, which expose the harmful pathogen. And you should go with the crop rotation, because some crops are always repeatedly, if you are growing the same crop on same piece of land repeatedly, there is every possibility of the pathogen to build in the same soil or same field. So if you alternate with the different types of crops, for example, pulses with monocots with pulses kind of thing, you can reduce the pest buildup in the soil. Similarly, for example, instead of going with the normal seedlings, if you go with the seedlings grown in a tray without any soilless media, you can control some of the soil-borne diseases and nematode populations. Of course, always the resistant varieties is the best way to adopt. And fertilizer program, judicious application of nitrogen and potash. High nitrogen will definitely pre-expose the plant for the pest and disease. Of course, potassium helps in developing the resistance against. And always use some trap crops. Identify some trap crops. The trap crops will be planted before taking up the main plantation, so that it attracts the insects, so that you can cull out those plant parts and destroy. That is one way of controlling it. And finally, if you look at some cultural practices, one of the cultural practices is summer plowing, and you have to go with the pheromone based control. For example, pheromone based, there are two things. One is it is a monitoring tool of when to take the chemical control, when to take the biological control. That is determined by the pheromone trap catch. But at the same time, you go with a more number of pheromone traps in the field. That also helps in managing technique, reduction of this one. So by some of the biological soil-borne organisms cannot be controlled with just normal fungicides or the pesticides. It is always better to infuse the soil with some biological control organisms. And finally, you have to use everything is judiciously CPAs. Not just like the other farmer is using, you should not use. You should use judiciously. If it is required only, farmer should take up this CPA usage. And some of the cultural, what I was mentioned, resistant varieties, crop rotation, crop sanitation, trap crops, and mechanical means destruction of the eggs, using the bird perches. For example, if the farmer is using 10 bird perches per acre, automatically birds will stand on it, and when they find the insect, they'll eat away. That is the olden days. These are the technique they use. Nighttime, they like keep the light traps. And finally, before chemical control, you go with the biological control, where you release the parasite and predators into the soil and on the crop. For example, if it is soil-borne pathogens, release the trichoderma into the soil, and some of the parasites and predators you can use on the crop, so that it can kill the harmful insects. Antagonistic fungi, trichoderma, and these are some of the like NPV virus against the larvae. These are some of the biological control methods farmers should use before resorting to chemical control. See, the easiest way is the chemical control, because farmer will go to the market and buy and use it on the crop. But the damage it causes to the environment and health is immense. That is why there should be programs, there should be support to the farmer in terms of use of some of the biological control and some of the IPM practices, and they should be intensified for growing, taking up this kind of CPA management techniques. These are here, you can see some natural biological control, you can see aphid management, you can see, for example, growing of some maize on the bunds of some pulse crops or some chilies. These also, because these rows of this maize and jowar help in multiplication of the natural predators and parasites. And if you look at the economic benefits, since you are reducing the number of pesticide sprays, it reduces the cost. You can apply less pesticides with the new green molecules. Only when necessary you can use. And you first of all decide on calendar sprays. Not only just calendar sprays. Sometimes if you find that there is epidemiologically, if it is required, we have to spray. And another one is depending on a weather parameter, you can, for example, if you take an example of cumin in Rajasthan, generally after January 15th, the aphid infestation comes out. Before that, you don't find. After January 15th. So when it is happening rigorously, happening recurrently year on year, then it is a time to apply any insecticide against this aphid. So this helps in totally reduction of the cost of application. That these are the economic environmental benefits means control of pest when there is necessary. Because when you are using the lower rates, low accumulation of pesticide in the environment, and no pesticide or low pesticide supports the multiplication of natural enemies or pests. So that indirectly helps as a part of biological control. So these are some of the environmental benefits by adopting these IPM techniques. If you look at this slide, the green ones are the new molecules where you can find use of 2 ml to 3 ml per 10 liter of water. Whereas chloropyrifos, acephate, metalaxyl, these are all the molecules where these molecules here, your application rate is very high. You are applying 700 more than 700 grams per hectare in acephate. And for example, these of course, imidacloprid is now we are not recommending now, but these new molecules when they introduced at the time, now it is only 30 to 40 grams or 60 grams per hectare is the application. So green molecules, always try to select green molecules where high LD52 mammalian toxicity, low application rate, and it is selective mode of action and less persistent in the ecosystem. And say, for example, now there are different, earlier used to be a chemical group based on mode of action. Now chemical group, mode of action, primary site of action, chemical subgroup. So by adopting that, there are pesticides are classified into 28 plus 3 unclassified also. 28 classified, 3 unclassified. So these, when there is a widening of the chemicals, chemical pesticides, so each one will have a different impact on the environment and also pest management. So before using this any pesticide, people should or farmers should know about the pesticide. What is the benefit? What is the harmfulness to the environment? Harmful to the human being? And what is the resurgence? All these things have to be known. It is the responsibility of the local agricultural department or agricultural scientist to educate the farmers on what to use and what not to use. Even the application technique also. Foliar application, soil application, aerial application, drip irrigation, granule, seed treatment. Seed treatment is the safest technique. When it is not working, granule application is also safest. But when you go with the aerial, which is with the drift, as well as for, it is falling on the water bodies nearby. So there is environmental contaminations are more for aerial applications. But of course, soil application, if it is pocket, it is okay. If it is not pocket, it will also leaves the residues of the crop. Drip irrigation, if you apply through the fertigation, any chemical to the soil, because there are foliar diseases, there are soil-borne diseases. For soil, these things are useful, but for foliar, invariably you have to go with the sprays. But when you are going with the sprays, you should be careful what kind of nozzles are using, and your application is properly targeting the plant or not, insect or not. And these are some of the biological control where you can see this is the trichoderma and this is the physarum wilt organism. When the best isolates which are highly virulent, those isolates are tested in the laboratory and finally took into the field, where this is one of the ways you can control the soil-borne plant pathogens. Because soil-borne plant pathogens, you cannot regularly control with only the chemicals. Once you start infusing the soil with these kind of biologicals, if they increase, but of course, along with that, you need to give some organic carbon and organic matter into the soil. So that slowly, 2 to 3 years time, slowly the disease-causing population will come down in the soil. Similarly, these are Beauveria bassiana. This fungi is effective on controlling some caterpillar. Nuclear polyhydrosis virus. This is also helpful in control. Pestolomyces that control the nematodes. BT cotton controls the bolo. So these are some of the biological control options we should use before resorting to that. Resort to chemical control. These are some of the classic examples of biological control. And say, for example, here also you can see some trichoderma, pseudomonas. These are the 4 grams per kg application rate. But here, one thing we should remember is all biological control, just like that, we can't do it. The reason is biological control is very effective in a lab. When it comes to the land, there are some issues. That is why, because when they leave into the environment, especially soil-borne disease control, they have to fight whatever we are giving antagonistic fungi. It has to fight with the local fungi or the local bacteria when it is released into the soil. So what we should do is, first of all, isolate, test, and then apply. So, and not only just recommendation is 2 grams and 3 grams per kg. This actually we have to multiply many fold outside. Say, for example, somebody recommends 2 kg per acre. What we have to these 2 kgs, you have to apply to farmyard manure, incubate it for a week or 10 days, then you apply. That means you are increasing the population load. Then what it is there, what it is recommended directly. Because here what is happening is when you are applying along with organic matter, or you are developing in the organic matter multifold, then the fight between the native organisms and fight between native organisms and applied organisms will be better. So that is why the one problem with biologicals is dispensing mechanism should be very, very strict and stringent. If you are not properly dispensing, so whatever we apply, they have, because sometimes your application is in the midday, sometimes these things are exposed to even the UV light also. We have to apply either early in the morning or late evening, we have to apply that technique. And what is the bioload in that biological control organism? Sometimes what happens is, once you put it in the market, so after 6 months, biological load in powder formulations may come down. Of course, it will continue for about 1.5 years in liquid formulations. But normal formulations like powder formulations, it is only hardly 6 months. So farmer should also look at what is the manufacturing date before using it. And after bringing to the soil, as I said, they have to multiply existing the farm and then they have to apply for effective controls. So biological control is not just application of the available material in the market, it is dispensing mechanism or application technology is also very, very important. But control is must. Definitely it gets controlled. And these are, if you look at the castor, maize, marigold, chrysanthemum, these are all the natural biodiversity which can attract the many natural insects which effective on for the control of pests. So it is always better to plant these kind of flowering plants or monocots in and around the field so that the insects are attracted. Sometimes the insects select the plant for egg laying, sometimes for food. So then they can be collected and controlled. That is one a trap crop. This is a border, some are the border crops like maize, where all beneficial insects multiply in those. And another approach is ITK, indigenous technical knowledge. That means local, the poor farmers of, let's say, some farmers of eastern Maharashtra and complete dry areas where the area is running under severe drought. Those areas, those farmers earlier, they were using some botanicals, indigenous technical knowledge for the control of pests and diseases in that areas. And those techniques were brought and evaluated, and which are exactly suitable can be adopted. I can give you some examples also. Say, for example, field adoption, uh, say chili garlic paste, where chili and garlic, 500 grams, 500 grams, take it and macerate it. Apply a little bit of kerosene and all. If you can apply it, is almost works as good as any insecticides. If you want to repel any insects from the field, you can go for hing asafoetida, neem leaf extract, which is an age-old material which can control the viral diseases. Neem seed kernel extract, which is helpful in the growth of the plant. Jivamrita, recently, many people are coming out with organic agriculture where they are using Jivamrit. And buttermilk, which is very good fungicide. It can control the fungus. Okay. And but so many ITKs are available across, but we have to choose ITKs which is best suitable to us and easily adoptable. Sometimes there are Dashaparni, where you have to mix 10 kinds of plants, which is not possible for the farmer to go and select all these. So which are the best, which are suitable, those things which are easily available and easily adoptable, those kind of ITKs only take it. We can, a farmer can make it and use it on his crop. One advantage is that easily formulate the farm level. There will not be any pesticide residue here. And when you want to produce only organic or the pesticide residue, you can go ahead. We are talking about organic many times, but now the time for IPM production also. IPM production means you apply normal fertilizers, but no less pesticides or sometimes no pesticides. So globally, to feed millions and millions, IPM based or no chemical pesticide based food production is more important for to feed the millions and millions, because there the reduction of productivity will not happen much. For example, some of the farmers, they are doing in 500 grams of garlic, 500 grams of red chili, 100 liters of water, and soap is must. When you apply the soap, there will be tenacity onto the leaf. And 5 kg neem seed, soak in 10 liters of water overnight, add 90 liters, and add 550 to 500 grams of soap, and that can be sprayed on the crop. Soap is basically required as an adjuvant because some plant species, they'll have a, especially food crops, wax layer on the surface. So whatever you apply, that will be actually drain off. When you spray, when you mix the any soap solution or soap powder, automatically it will fall on the leaf and there will be tenacity, so that the whatever you are using this byproduct, that is attached to the plant's leaf surface. And some of the trials or experiments were conducted in different places. The best one is in chilies is Panchagavya chili paste, neem leaf extract. For example, in Rajasthan, you can find some Jivamrita neem oil and neem seed kernel extract. These are found to be better used. And why the people are talking about the Panchagavya, Jivamrita, and all these things. Nowadays, in organic culture, also people are using regularly, because it will contain a lot of beneficial organisms. If it is, it will contain 38,000 colony forms of per ml of Panchagavya. In bacteria, it is almost 18 million per ml of solution. And lactobacillus, it's almost 22 million. So these are the huge benefits which are available. When we are using pesticides, automatically these population in the soil also slowly reduced, because this fungi, this bacteria, these are also available not only in Panchagavya, but in small quantities in the soil also. So azospirillum, PSB, Pseudomonas, they are all very, very less quantities available in the soil. But when you are multiplying and giving into the soil, increase the population into the soil, it not only improve the productivity, at the same time, it also helps as a pesticide in the soil or on the crop. So in the very, very poor farmers of some of the agency areas, they are using some own techniques like, protecting the nurseries with their plastic sheets and using the saris in the form of a plastic sheet, in the place of a plastic sheet. Whatever the gunny bags available, they are converting it, because these local techniques they are using to reduce the cost of cultivation, particularly in that area. And in case of cotton, yellow cloth, because yellow is attracted, all the insects are attracted to yellow color. So using yellow cloth for sucking up, you smear some oil, and actually in the crop, if you drag along, automatically some of the insects are getting attached to this one and gets killed. These are some of the local techniques where to reduce the cost of chemical, or to not to use the cost of not to use the chemical pesticides. Farmers are adopting different areas. And say, for example, in this slide you can see that there are different nozzles are there for a spray. Sometimes, for weedicide, one kind of nozzle, fungicide, another kind of nozzle. These kind of nozzles are there, some smallest drop size to largest drop size. So from shifting from high volume to low volume, reduce the residue levels because exactly and aptly these droplets fall on the surface of the leaf. Okay, and this is very, very important. But under Indian conditions, everything is a normal nozzle. But here, if you use different nozzle for a different thing, and is always better for ultra low volume sprayers where the droplet size is less and its coverage is more. And similarly, when the farmer is spraying, if you look at this left one, if there is no enough pressure in the spray tank, it looks like that. And when there is in between the spaces where insecticide is not falling, so the insect will not get killed. So when there is enough pressure in that one, you can see that the entire spray covers the entire leaf surface. Similarly, here I was mentioning about the soap solution. When you use the soap solution, it is something like that. You can spread on the surface of the leaf. If you are not using a normal, with just you find only half circle here, all the three you can see the difference. This is the spreading. When you apply some spreader or some tank adjuvant, it spreads on the surface. So if the surface is more, coverage is more, and tenacity and attachment to the leaf is also more. Similarly, here, if you look at this one, these are all the very, very simple techniques to reduce the amount of pesticide to use on the crop, and effective control of the pest, and effective uh, residue management. For example, here if you can small droplets, surface area covered is eightfold. For example, here it is only the twofold. What I'm saying is simply forget about these things. Simply telling that when the smaller the size, coverage on the leaf surface is more. Bigger the size, its coverage is less relatively. So very, very small adoptions. Say, I'll give an example of the soap. When soap is applied for chilies and all the crops, the amount of pesticide falling on the leaf and spreading on the leaf, retaining on the leaf after the small drizzle also more. This is from different studies conducted. So that is why what clearly saying is that, so not only just bringing chemical, but of course, nowadays there are some chemicals manufactured along with adjuvant. So those chemicals are okay. If not, it is always better to use some adjuvant. And at the same time, if it is not available, apply some soap or shampoo and just you can spray. The chemical gets attached onto the plant surface. And these are some of the natural biological controls. And one more thing I would like to highlight is, see, everywhere there should be plant health clinics. Like now the Andhra, if you look at the Raitu Bharosa Kendras. So one scientist or the local university or one scientist or technical expert should be once in a week should go around and advise the farmers, which are going in some places, and it should be strictly done. Another one is to run the plant health clinic where exactly farmer can get. But of course, one good thing is that now there are a lot of apps are available. The farmer takes a photograph and upload. Automatically, he'll get the what is the disease and all. At the same time, farmer will also get the recommendation for the control of it. But the thing is, farmer should know how to use this smartphone for the management, for the identification of the pest, how to send the message, how to get the recommendation and all those things. If that is the case, like a plant health, every region, if they maintain plant health clinic like this, or help the farmers in use of some of the websites where identifying the uh, nature of damage, pests and diseases, it would be very helpful to the farmer. And now we come to the household things. Generally, we buy a lot of fruits and vegetables in the market and bring it. So here, there are some tips. Though it is for agriculture, I felt like keeping one slide on this. Where washing. See, before consumption, of course, everybody washes it. But soak 10% vinegar solution for 15 minutes. Because all the, whatever the remnants are there on the surface of the plant, they get dissolved and washed out in the washing. Some of the fruits and vegetables, when we go for peeling, along with the peel, a lot of pesticide is also taken out through the removal of outer layers. Sometimes the heat treatments like boiling or blanching can reduce the pesticide residues in the food, because when the food material is exposed to the high temperatures, some of the molecules are denatured. Because of the denature, you can reduce the pesticides at the household. Say generally what happens is some of the pesticides are accumulated in the fat, especially for the animal, poultry, fish or meat, whatever. So it is always better to trim the fat or remove the fat before cooking, so that the accumulation of pesticide residues into the fat system can be totally eliminated, because we are removing it, the fat from the animal meat. So these are all the points I would like to discuss today with all of you, and tell you something about pesticide residue management in agriculture. Along with that, some residue management at the household. Mostly the pesticide residue management is very, very important nowadays. If you look at olden days, hardly we find cancers and all. But nowadays, very, very frequently, because the environmental pollution, as well as many of the food materials which are heavily studded with these pesticide residues. So it always, every time, it is always better to reduce the pesticide usage to that extent, go with some of the biological control methods, cultural control methods, physical control methods. And of course, use of chemicals is must. We cannot avoid, because they produce the food material for feed millions. Definitely we should go. But how judiciously we are going, we are using, and the farmer is using, and whether it is really using for the purpose, or he is using like any fellow farmer is using. No, it should be very, very carefully, technically guided and technically applied. Then only we can reduce. But techniques are very simple. Only adoption is important. Thank you. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yeah, sorry, I lost the connection for a while. Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you for a
yeah.
very detailed presentation. So I will take up some questions. Since we are running short of time, we are left with just for 10 minutes.
Okay.
I'll quickly take up some questions. Yeah. So few might be, you must have already answered, explained about them. Still, I'll read out. So what are the key factors that lead to high pesticide residues in crops?
See, key factors means one is under Indian conditions, indiscriminate use and using of the non-target organisms, and application more than what it is recommended, especially dose wise. These are some of the major issues which are the cause of the pesticide residues under Indian conditions. Say, for example, if you take the vegetables, every alternate day farmers spray insecticide on the vegetable, which is not required at all, not warranted. So this is are some of the reasons why these are coming regularly, residues. Take an example, India, we are using about 400 grams active ingredient, whereas the same uh, analogy, if you take the United States, their application rates are more than 400, almost 1.8, up to even beyond that. But they don't find much of a residue issue, because the way you are applying and the number of sprays, amount you are applying, when you are applying, what for you are applying, these things, unless people clearly understand, the indiscriminate use continues to happen. And these are the main reasons for residues under Indian conditions. Next question, please.
Yeah, okay.
1.8 kg, I mean to say. 1.8 kg in some of the other countries, Western countries. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And how can farmers reduce pesticide residues without affecting yield?
Okay. So say see one thing, they should resort to all IPM packages, integrated pest management package, where from the beginning onwards, you go with cultural methods, mechanical methods. If it is resistant varieties available, nothing like that. Go directly with the resistant varieties and reduce the number of sprays on the crop. You select the green molecules, reduce the number of sprays. In between the sprays, go with this indigenous technical knowledge, what I discussed with you in the presentation, or some botanical pesticides you use in between. So these are the interventions farmers should take up to reduce the residues on the crop.
Okay. And what are the safe pre-harvest intervals for commonly used pesticides?
No, that depends on pesticide. All the pesticides will not have the same pre-harvest intervals. Some are 17, some are 15, some are 14. Lower the pre-harvest intervals, say for example, and for fruits and vegetables, let's say example take, lower the pre-harvest interval, it is better. For example, 4 days pre-harvest interval, you can harvest on the 7th or 8th day. If it is pre-harvest interval is 15 days, then you have to wait for 15 days for the harvesting.
Okay.
So pre-harvest interval is almost lower the better, but should be very effective. Within pre-harvest interval, actually it is a time between application and harvesting. And the chemical should be more effective in controlling in between, and lesser the pre-harvest interval is the better.
Okay.
For harvesting the produce and reduction of pesticide residues.
Okay. You can stop sharing the screen, and if possible, you can on the video. Okay. And are there any cost-effective residue testing methods for small farmers? Hello? Hello? Are you connected? Hello? Next question. Are there any cost-effective residue testing methods for small farmers? Hello?
Your voice is not audible. Yeah, tell me.
Yeah. Yeah. Next question. Are there any cost-effective residue testing methods for small farmers? You could listen to the
Actually, for
yeah.
few molecules, yeah, so there are some researches going on, and also some you can test some of the molecules but molecules, because farmer are using too many molecules, but testing too many molecules in the one kit is not possible currently, but research is going on.
Okay. Yeah. How can integrated pest management help in residue management?
Yeah, because in IPM program, what we are generally what farmer has to adopt is, as I mentioned, that he has to adopt all the techniques, cultural, biological, chemical, cultural, biological, and biological, and botanical. So when they're adopting it, he reduce the number of sprays on the crop. So IPM itself says that, use all the techniques and measures so as to reduce the amount of pesticide on the crop. So that is why by adopting IPM, you reduce the number of sprays on the crop. To that extent, the pesticide residues are within the limits or control, or at least. Yes, next.
Okay. Yeah. How can, sorry, which crops are most
Next, please.
vulnerable to high risk? Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Voice is not audible, madam. Yeah, tell me, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me, please.
Next question. Which crops are most vulnerable high pesticide residues?
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, which
Hello.
crops are most, can you hear me? Hello? Are you able to hear
Your
me?
your voice is getting disconnected. Yeah, tell me, please.
Which crops are most vulnerable to high pesticide residues?
No, your voice is not clear.
1 minute, 1 second, just 1 second. Yeah, which crops are most vulnerable to high pesticide residues?
See, it is not vulnerability, but the way farmer uses determines the residues on the crop. But the crops like chilies, tomato, brinjal, and many of the vegetables, and especially leafy vegetables, these are all the highly prone to high pesticide residues. Proning means the way farmer applies. Everywhere
Okay,
you go, these are the crops where farmer applies very high doses.
okay. And what role do pesticides play in reducing chemical residues?
Hello?
What role do biopesticides play in
Hello?
reducing chemical residues? Hello?
See, biopesticides means, yeah, is it audible? My voice is audible?
Yes, 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 yes.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello?
I can hear
Yeah,
you.
yeah. See, see, biopesticides means, yeah, you are releasing another organism to kill this pest, or antagonistic fungi to kill the another fungi, and some of the antagonistic fungi on the insects. So the all biological control parameters, control organisms, they effectively control. But the only thing is here, you have to take it up when there is uh, just just you find some problem in the field. When it is problem is very severe, under such circumstances, invariably you have to go to the chemical. But that is why you have to regular farmer has to regularly observe the field. Whenever he finds that, we call it as a technically threshold level. Okay, there is a threshold level for biological control. There is a threshold level for chemical control also. So initially, when there is a disease occurrence, initially when there is a pest occurrence, at the time, if you go with application of biological control, that is the best way to manage.
Okay. And how does ITC support farmers in achieving residue-free crop standards?
What?
How does ITC support farmers
Please come again.
in a hello? I'll chat box. So
Your voice is not audible, madam.
hello.